Alright, hello everybody, it is Coach Scythe, your coach of the Atlanta Braviaries, bringing to you my draft analysis for the RCF, the Randomized Chaos Facility. So, the Randomized Chaos Facility is a randomized draft league, basically. So basically, they had their tiers based on the Smogon tiers, and they put them in this wheel, right? And they put them in the wheel, and then they spun them, and whatever mon it landed on when it was your turn, that's the Pokemon that you got. Basic stuff. And they also have these pretty cool things called power-ups. So these consist of, like, re-rolling a mon if you want to, or forcing someone else to re-roll a mon, or forcing a trade, or blocking your opponent from Gigantamaxing, because as you can see on the layout, there is a Gigantamax tier. But there's also an Uber tier. Ubers are allowed in this league, however they are not allowed to hold an item. That's basically the only restriction, unless it's Darmanitan in Galarian form, because it's too broken with an item, but not without an item. But it's too weak without an item is what I was going to say. So Galarian Darmanitan can hold an item. He's the only Uber that's allowed to. And also, the only other thing that's basically banned is Cinderace, Gigantamax Cinderace is not allowed to hold, or is not allowed to run Libero. Which is no problem, because nobody got Cinderace. So it's not a problem. So with that being said, I did want to talk about LET for a little bit, for just a quick minute. So, there is no battle for Week 7 and 8, and the reason being, both my opponents dropped from the league. So basically, my Week 7 opponent, around Week 8, or the beginning of Week 8, completely vanished. Nowhere to be seen, no one heard from him. His Discord account is still active, and not active, it's still alive. It's been inactive, and it's still in the Discord server, so it's not like he just left the server, he just bounced. We don't know where he went, and we don't know when he'll come back. And my Week 8 opponent had some personal life stuff going on, and so he decided to drop from the league. And the person who runs the Rising Stars conference of LET, Sven, decided that it was too late in the league to find a replacement, and their remaining matches will be forfeit wins. So, with that being said, we finish out the season 5-3 with a +8 differential, and we made playoffs. The Atlanta Braviaries are coming to LET playoffs, guaranteed to just do round 1. That's basically it. But hopefully, if all goes well and we get extra lucky, we can make it into the finals and possibly become the champion. But that's being hopeful. Being realistic, maybe I could make it past round 1. We don't really know. Now, it's a little bittersweet. I would have rather played out my matches rather than have the forfeit wins. But there's nothing you can do about it. But that's it. We made playoffs. For the first time ever, I've made playoffs. And so, I'm excited. I think it'll be a fun time. And that's basically it. That's all I wanted to say. Moving on into the RCF, let's get into the draft analysis, the moment you've all been waiting for. Sorry, I just hit my mic. So, starting us off, we got Cramarand. Cramarand is my only form of hazard removal on this team. Literally, no joke. My only form of it, as far as I know. I could be wrong, but I'm fairly sure he's my only form. He has a very interesting ability in Gulp Missile. Gulp Missile, if you use Dive or Surf, you come out with an Arrokuda or a Pikachu, and when you're hit with physical contact moves, you shoot out the Arrokuda, damaging the opponent. And if it's a Pikachu, you damage the opponent while also paralyzing it. So we're hoping for that Pikachu, but I think it's only like a 20/10% chance. I don't really know. That's something I'll have to look up, really. But with that being said, there's only like a couple of sets I think he's good at, or maybe only one set, which is like, if I can think of it, Dive, maybe Dive/Surf, Air//Brave Bird, maybe. Has pretty decent defenses, or not defenses, decent stats. Like his stat range is basically from 70 to 80 to 95. Besides his defense stat, which is 55. Which is kind of why when Gold Missile activates is usually after he died, or after it's died. So there's that. But there's not much else to say. Like, he's my former Hazard removal, and he has a pretty interesting ability. I've never really seen Cramarand used in a competitive format. So it'll be interesting. But if I'm being honest, next time I get the reroll, I'm kind of tempted to use it on him. But let's move on. So, moving on, we have Seismitoad. Seismitoad is a pretty decent mon. It's mostly bulky. It gets access to things like Knockoff and Toxic, but most mons get Toxic. It provides me with rocks. It's a water absorb mon, so if there are any potential big water type threats, I have my water absorb mon ready to go. And what else is there to say? It scalds, it earth powers. Scald has like chances to burn, as you guys know. And that could definitely be interesting. You know, having Scald chance would be pretty nice. Or burn chance would be pretty nice, especially if it's on a very big physical threat. Being able to burn it is always nice. So next up we have Corviknights. Corviknights is a defensive mon, let me tell you. Base 1... I keep hitting my mic. I'm sorry. Base 145 defense. Crazy. So max that out plus Iron Defense Body Press. Show me you're switching. Besides a Ghost type. But it gets access to Ghost type moves like Poltergeist and Shadow Ball. So there's that. It gets access to things like Knockoff and Toxic. This thing is, like I said, mostly on the defensive. But gaining access to the new move Poltergeist is really nice because you don't have to run that physical special split. I mean, you still can because that's its main like set, but not all the time. It has Will-O-Wisp and yada yada. It also gets access to T-Spikes. So if I want to run T-Spikes instead of just regular Toxic, there's that option. But that's about it. Like I said, it's mostly on the defensive. It can take a lot of hits and then dish them right back out. So that was completing the RU tier. Moving into the OU tier, we got Necrozma. Prism is here. Prism said, I'm doing not the best in LET, but I'm here to put in some work. And so hopefully he can put in some work. There have been a couple of sets that are very useful on Necrozma, like Photon Geyser, Heat Wave, Stealth Rocks. It gets access to Dragon Dance, so it can Dragon Dance, Photon Geyser, and then 2 physical moves. Sub Dragon Dance, Photon Geyser, other move. That could be a set. That's a set right there. I just made up a set. But it gets access to things like Sword Dance as well. So that could be something. It gets pretty decent coverage with X-Scissor. It gets pretty reliable recovery with Moonlight. This thing also can go on the defensive, because it can set rocks. It can be a defensive rock setter. It gets access to Knockoff, so it can be a defensive rock setter with Knockoff and yada yada. Overall, it can be a pretty interesting mon, and I think it'll be pretty fun to use it again. Maybe run some new sets, make it more chaotic for the randomized chaos facility. But that's pretty much all there is to say. Let's move on into the next mon. We got Swine. I have rocks this season, but it gets access to Thick Fat, which is really good, making fire and ice type both neutral damage. Because I don't believe ice resists its own type. If it does, then it's going to be resisted damage from ice type attacks, which will be very nice. But this thing I feel like can go on the offensive. It has the attack stat too, and it has a pretty decent speed stat with base 80 speed. I've literally gone against a Scarfed Swine for a Zero Aura. I kid you not. It's a thing that's happened to me. it was a fun time. Let me just tell you that. It was a fun time. So maybe we can pull some shenanigans like that with our Mamoswine here. It'll be pretty fun. I kind of want to keep it with the randomized chaos facility, and maybe put in some chaos in my movesets here and there. But other than that, it's a pretty decent stealth rock setter. And like I said, it can go on the offensive. It gets, things like Ice Shard and Icicle Crash, or it gets priority. It gets knockoff, which I just found out about, because when I do these draft analysis, I look the mon up on Showdown, and then go over the move pool and things like that. And it gets access. I didn't know it got access to knockoff. That's really cool. Avalanche, I feel like could be a good move for this one, because it's a bit on the slower end. Body Press would actually not be the best, because it doesn't have the best defenses. It has a good HP stat, but base 80 and 60 defenses, so not the best when it comes to that. So, moving on, by the way, we get 4, I said this, did I? We get 4 UU Mons. So, for my third UU Mon, we got Arcanine. Arcanine is a good Mon, let me tell you. Arcanine has these attacking stats to go to be both physical and special, which is very scary to go against. It has pretty decent defenses with base 80, and has a very decent speed tier with base 95, and a good HP stat at base 90. This thing actually gets a really decent amount of coverage. It gets access to Teleport, which I think is absolutely crazy. It gets Wild Charge, it gets Play Rough, it gets Outrage, Dragon Pulse. It gets some crazy things. It gets Close Combat. Morning Sun is obviously its best way of recovery. It can Willow and Toxic. I mean, some mons can do that. And it gets access to Ground-type Scald, aka Scorching Sands. So like I said, it can be both special and physical, so you kind of have to scout for which one would be better against your team. And I could definitely be bringing both. This mon loves its heavy-duty boots and things like that. It's a really good boots user. I think it could also be a pretty good life orb user if you're not facing a great rock setter, or if like there's no real rock, if like there's no hazards at all, or if there's not the best like rock setter, or you don't think the rock setter will be coming, those types of thing. So it could be very useful, very, very useful. And I'm actually really excited to use it. All these mons, besides Necrozma, Seismitoad, and I think maybe one more, are mons I've never used before. So it should be interesting. And that's how I like when it comes to drafting Pokemon and just Pokemon in general. I like using new mons. I like using mons I've never used before, especially in draft format. So it should be very interesting and very fun. So for our final UU, we got Sharpedo. As you can see, I'm building up a pretty big grass type weakness, which is not fun, and that's something we're going to have to fix whenever we get a chance to reroll a Pokemon. But it gets a good ability. It has Rough Skin and Speed Boost, so I think both could come in handy if I need a more defensive. Actually, never mind. I take that back because it has base 40 defenses. Never mind. But, Rough Skin could come in handy if I need chip on something like maybe an Urshifu that's running around. But other than that, I don't know the greatest sets when it comes to Sharpedo here. Like, it gets Close Combat, which is pretty interesting. It has access to Aqua Jet. It gets Flip Turn 2, which is basically the water type U-turn. And that's about it. Well, those are the most notable things. It gets Poison Jab for coverage for the fairy types. It can be special too, because it has a base 95 special attack stat. So it can also be special. It gets things like Scald. No, it does not get Scald. It gets Surf. It gets Ice Beam. It gets Dark Pulse. It's very limited on the special side, but it could come in handy if need be. So, with that being said, let's move on to our OU tier. We have Magnozone. I think Magnozone is not only do we have a grass type weakness, but we also have an electric type weakness because water types are both weak to grass and electric. I think we have a really good resist here, especially for electric types with Magnozone. I've never used Magnozone, and I've never gone against. Well, I have gone against a Magnozone before, but I've never gone against it a lot. So I don't know what it does. I guess it mostly volt switches and flash cannons a bit. I know some Scarf sets are pretty popular. Possibly Specs could be good. It gets access to Teleport and obviously Thunder Wave and Toxic. Volt Switch. It has seems to be a pretty limited moveset in my opinion. Mostly to its stabs and some normal type moves. But I think it could come in handy. Has pretty good defenses with base 115 physical defense stat and then a base 90 special defense stat. And a decent HP stat with base 70 and a really good special attacking stat at base 130. So I think even if it's just its stab, I think it can be very useful, although it is very weak to ground type. So that's something we'll have to be wary of. So we got Ditto as our next OU mon, and I feel like Ditto could be not very good, but pretty good in this kind of league, because Ubers aren't allowed to hold items. However, if it's Ditto, it can hold an item, and it can copy an Ubermon and then now have an item, which is pretty interesting, and that's something I definitely try to pull eventually. For those of you... no, never mind. Anyways, moving on. Ditto has one moveset. It has one moveset, and it's Transform. It's the only move that it gets. But like I said, I'm able to copy Ubermons, which is very nice. I get a read on what their set is. I keep my HP stats, so most of Ditto's HP is usually maxed out and things like that. So that'll be interesting and fun to do. But that's about it. It's Ditto. It's just Ditto. So, to keep things suspenseful, they wanted to put off the Ubers as long as possible, so we got our GMAX, and we got Gigantamax Inteleon. This is a mon that I have experience with using. I know that the Focus Energy Scope Lens set is pretty popular. What I love about this mon is that its GMAX move, GMAX Hydro Snipe, ignores abilities, so water absorbed mons can't even switch in once this thing is GMAXed. It gets pivot options with U-turn. I know it can set up screens. It's Scald. Well, mostly snipe shots, but it can Scald as well. It can excuse me, I'm so sorry. It can Dark Pulse and Ice Beam. It gets access to Baton Pass, so if I wanted to do some agility shenanigans with Baton Pass, there's that. And it gets priority with Aqua Drain, and also gets Air Slash for some more coverage. Those are the main moves. Those are the moves that stand out the most when you're talking about Inteleon. Or the moves that most stand out to me, because those are the moves I've seen most used, like Dark Pulse, Air Slash, Ice Beam, Snipe Shot, U-turn, Focus Energy. But I think it can definitely be useful, and maybe we can figure out some new stuff to do with it. It's pretty fast at base 120 speed, and then base 125 special attack, and then base 70 HP. Not the best defenses, base 65 in both defense areas, so it's not the best defensively, but this thing can click a button and do some damage, and that's exactly what it is here to do. So, moving on, and for our final mon, we have Galeo. I was kind of hoping for Q and Black since I've used Q and Black before. Sorry, I just hit my mic again. But beggars can't be choosers. This thing actually gets very decent coverage. It gets Flare Blitz and Flame Charge if I want to do some Flame Charge shenanigans. Its Sunsteel Strike move is great thumbnail potential. But it gets a lot of Fire type moves because I feel like, it's the Sun Pokemon type thing, so it has to get some fire type moves. It gets Calm Mind, and it doesn't have a bad special defense stat. It's based on 113 special attack stat, is what I meant. So I can do some special shenanigans and be a special mon. It gets things like Fire Blast and Flamethrower, and I can definitely do that. Unfortunately, it doesn't get Dragon Dance because it's not Necrozma Dustman, but, you know, could still be useful. Like I said, Sensitive Strike's great dominant potential. It's Zen Headbutt, it gets Psychic Fangs for that, it gets Knockoff too as well. So we do have a decent amount of knockoff mons. We have like 4 if I'm not mistaken. Actually 5 knockoff mons, which is really, really nice. But I don't know, I've never really seen Solgaleo used or have used it myself. So it should be an interesting experience. I think I will definitely have fun this season, and it'll definitely be one hell of a ride. And with that being said, that's going to bring us to an end of our draft analysis. Solgaleo, all these mons are pretty good mons in my opinion. Solgaleo obviously, you know, gets just an absurd amount of moves in my opinion. Like, he gets really good moves. And with that being said, that's going to bring an end to our randomized chaos facility draft analysis. Let the chaos ensue. I'm Coach Scythe, your coach of the Atlanta Braviaries. I'll see you guys next time. Thank you.